Welcome to another episode of Patroma Therapy. Today we're going to be discussing a short story by Dostoevsky, and it's called White Nights. And it was translated first by Constant Garnett, and the first part of it is called The First Night. So I'm going to start off by just reading the first paragraph, and then we can discuss it a bit. How does that sound?
Well, that sounds wonderful. Please proceed.
Well, here we go. It was a wonderful night, such a night as is only possible when we are young, dear reader. The sky was so starry, so bright that, looking at it, one could not help asking oneself whether ill-humored and capricious people could live under such a sky. That is the youthful question too, dear reader, very youthful, but may the Lord put it more frequently into your heart. Speaking of capricious and ill-humored people, I cannot help recalling my moral condition all that day. From early morning, I had been oppressed by a strange despondency. So the story starts off with a first-person narrator who's telling us about this night. Let me just continue a little bit more. He's telling us. It suddenly seemed to me that I was lonely, that everyone was forsaking me and going away from me. Of course, anyone is entitled to ask who everyone was, for though I had been living 8 years in Petersburg, I had hardly an acquaintance. But what did I want with acquaintances? I was acquainted with all of Petersburg as it was. That was why I felt as though they were all deserting me, when all Petersburg packed up and went to its summer villa. I felt afraid of being alone, and for 3 whole days I wandered about the town in profound dejection, not knowing what to do with myself. Whether I walked in the Nevsky, went to the gardens, or sauntered on the embankment, there was not one face of those I had been accustomed to meet at the same time and place all the year. They, of course, do not know me, but I know them. I know them intimately. I have almost made a study of their faces, and I'm delighted when they are gay and downcast, when they are under a cloud. I've almost struck up a friendship with one old man who I meet every blessed day at the same hour. Such a grave, pensive countenance. He's always whispering to himself and brandishing his left arm, while in his right hand he holds a long, gnarled stick with a golden knob. He even notices me and takes a warm interest in me. If I happen not to be at a certain time in the same spot, I'm sure that he feels disappointed. That's how it is. We almost bow to each other, especially when we're both in a good humor. The other day, when we had not seen each other for 2 days and we met on the third, we were actually touching our hats, but then, realizing in time, dropped our hands and passed each other with a look of interest. So that's the first paragraph.
Well, this was a good read. An excellent one. A sad one, but good.
He is like so obsessed. He says he's wandering around and he almost talked to this guy. He almost tipped his hat. He's lived there for how many years? 8 years, and he doesn't even have an acquaintance. Who lives in a city for 8 years and doesn't know one person?
How old is he? Is there
The
his age
narrator?
down there? Mm-hmm. The dreamer.
The narrator
called him the dreamer, I guess.
Well, the subtitle is, includes the word dreamer. I'm not sure how old he is. He's old enough to have a hat, and he's been around for 8 years, and he's wandering by himself. I guess I don't know. I don't really know. No, I think he's older than that.
Because the girl he met, I specifically looked for her age, and she said that she was she sits 15 for the 15 year for 15 years she sat with her grandmother pinned to her dress, and then 2 years ago there was this lodger with them, so that makes her 17 or 18 maximum. Is that right?
Well, let's say that she's under 20. So the first part that I just read, the narrator is just telling us how he's wandering around the city of Petersburg, and many of the people have left for their summer homes, because we're in the summertime right now, 2020. But I think of the guy as being, I think of him as being like early 30s, because he just doesn't really have very much experience with women. And I also came across something, another work by Dostoevsky, Notes from the Underground, and somebody who was writing about Dostoevsky, who lived from 1821 to 1881. This person says Dostoevsky was the 19th century Russia's only great novelist of the city. In his own words, the poet of the accidental tribe. So Dostoevsky has this term called the accidental tribe, which refers to those who are rootless, divorced from tradition and traditional assurances. So according to Dostoevsky, if you're living in the city is different than if you're living out on the land. So this city dweller who narrates the story is one of these characters who's alienated and disconnected. I mean,
damn.
And he's trying to meet this girl. The guy's alienated and disconnected. Like what a guy.
I found it to be very sad, like I said before, since I could relate to it so much. Everyone relates things to what they know, right?
Mm-hmm. How does that work for you?
I think it's a tragic love story. First I thought that was a tragic love story. Now it seems to me like it's a sad romantic comedy, maybe. But I feel for him, like I said. Not that I hate him or diminish his abilities or wishes. I sympathize rather, yeah. But then again, maybe I love him, but at the same time I hate him. I don't know how to describe it. Not that
love-hate. It's a love-hate
relationship. At the same time, exactly. Because if I were my younger self, I would have written a letter to myself saying that don't ever do what he did in this novella. Because I think this novella, because it's quite short, 60 or 70 pages long. And,
no, it's still a novel. It's
novel.
Okay. Let's not. No. It's called a short story. So.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think Dude is delusional the same way I was when I was 18. You say he's like in his early 30s, but maybe. And maybe it's his upbringing that affected his beliefs. Again, everyone relates things to what they know. So somehow I feel for him because he doesn't get women, and but maybe there are guys out there who get women, and guys who don't. Hard to say.
What you mean is he doesn't understand women, or he can't get a date with a woman?
Both, a little bit of both, maybe. And I can.
Yeah.
Go on.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, part of the challenge of adolescence is to figure out who you are, to start figuring out who you are, and then how to connect that with generally the opposite sex. So one of the challenges of adolescence, 15 through 18, is to try to figure out, okay, who am I? What am I all about? And would anybody ever like me? So let me just try to see if I can find like a girl. And for me, Twilight Nights is about thwarted love. He projects all his needs and desires, first of all, onto the city, and then onto the woman. And I don't know if you have, I don't know if you know this expression, 'tis better to have loved and lost.
I knew that, yes.
Than never to have loved at all.
I think it's a
beautiful
expression.
What do you think about
that? I love it. I somehow love it because it was yin and yang in one sentence. Hey, do you know that this work, this White Nights novel, takes its title from the Twilight periods that nearly, they last until midnight, I think, in northern lands, where specifically in St. Petersburg, where the dreamer lives.
Now, I didn't know that when I studied this a little bit in college. I just know that I always loved this story, and then I hadn't read it for a long time, and then I guess I maybe read it again about a year or so ago, and I had heard of this phenomenon of the northern lights where the sky is kind of glowing, and I know
Exactly,
that a couple.
exactly.
Yeah. So what is it like
Well, it
have
happens.
you
It
experienced
happens
that?
in all northern regions of Russia, not only Saint Petersburg, but also in Siberia. Well, it just doesn't get dark at night for like I don't know, 30 days during the summer. I'm not sure. Have to look it up. But it's like a twilight. You
Well,
need
that
twilight the whole night through.
so it's kind of like it will really mess with your circadian rhythms. I think in
Exactly. That's
earlier
why he
episodes.
probably cannot get to sleep and himself to sleep and walks around the town all night long and meets this girl.
Well, I mean, for me, the reason he can't get to sleep is because he's a malcontent. He is he never he's never like Eric Erickson has the developmental stages of man or of humanity. Like you're a baby, you're a child, you're a toddler, you're an adolescent, you're a young adult, you're an adult. Like there's all these challenges of the stages of development, and he hasn't successfully even figured out how to be a 15-year-old, and probably now he's like 20, 21, 23, 24. And so he's kind of in arrested development, and he projects his needs onto the city, and he projects his need for a woman onto this girl who's already in love with someone else. And so he's this misfit. He's like a misfit in the city, and cities are full of all of these people just wandering around, staring at each other, looking at each other, you know.
You're talking about men
Every,
mostly, right?
well, of
Because
course.
because substantial number of men, like the problem with this guy's problem is one thing. He like grew up with this idea that the most important factor with women is like being nice, how nice, kind, sweet, caring, I don't know, and respectful he is, which is partially true,
Yeah, but I mean, like a lot of women don't want a nice guy
Oh,
because he does.
they do want nice guys, but let me just finish. I'm trying to
Go ahead.
concentrate. Well, and probably he gets this idea from his mother or
Yes,
some kind of
yes,
woman he
aunt
lived
or
with.
something. Yes,
He was raised, and because
yes,
he asked her what women like, right? And she would have
right.
answered that well, women like nice guy who's sweet and funny and all that. And then he's looking women who would he's trying to do this for women, but that is wrong advice because um, it's not the most important traits. Those traits are what like there should be, but there's got to be something else. Uh,
Right. Well, also this guy has no drive. You know, he's been in
exactly,
the city
exactly.
for.
That's my
He,
point exactly. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just
go,
trying to
no, no. Go
finish.
ahead. Continue. Yeah, just use the word
Exactly. That's
drive.
very
Yeah.
important for me because that kind of touched the nerve. This novel, which I sort of love and hate, and I don't understand why it has become so popular. But this guy had to have something else, like let it be a hobby or I don't know, charisma or looks, besides being nice. And when you say that
Right. Yeah. He.
large population of men just walking around frustrated without understanding
Yes.
what's really going on, I guess that's the reason that no one's
Yes.
told them to about.
Exactly. And yeah, you're right about that. And also, they can't express it because they don't have any experience with the opposite sex. So they can kind of maybe talk to their mom or maybe their aunt, but they don't ever talk to anyone. They don't ever take any risks. They don't take any chances. Like in T.S. Eliot's poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, Eliot talks about the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo, and he just doesn't even know how to approach them and or what to say, and he's worried, does he dare to part his hair or should he eat a peach? He can't make any decisions. It's like this the frustrated modern man, and I think Dostoevsky has a classic example here, and then there's another one in the underground, notes from the underground, another guy who can't really figure out what to do. But back to your thing about the white knights. Certainly there's Dostoevsky could have set this anywhere, but he sets it during this time period when people are displaced from the city. The people who have money have left the city to go to their summer house, and those that are left behind, possibly, like, what kind of people are left behind? People without money, right? Workers.
Yeah, who doesn't have all these daches and summer houses, and probably working class too.
So he's probably of either the middle or the working class, or even if he was middle class, he'd be going off with somebody else and hanging out at their dacha. But so he doesn't quite have status, but he has desires. He has the desire to connect with someone. And we see this desire that he projects on the city, and he projects it even on this old man that he's thinking maybe to tip his hat to. I mean, he says
he's like confused and frustrated, I think, both by the loneliness and by the bad advice from the woman who raised him.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah,
and also he says, I've mentioned already that I had felt worried for 3 days before I guessed the cause of my uneasiness. So now he's trying to figure it out. I felt ill at ease in the street. This one had gone and that one had gone. What had become of the other person? And at home, I didn't feel like myself either. For 2 evenings, I was puzzling my brain to think of what was amiss in my corner. Why did I feel so uncomfortable? And in perplexity, I scanned my grimy green walls, my ceiling covered with spider webs, the growth of which the maid had so successfully encouraged. I looked all over my furniture, examined every chair, wondering whether the trouble lay. For if one chair's not standing in the same position as I stood it the day before, I'm not myself.
He's unhappy. He's unhappy, and
yes.
And still he thinks that a woman can make him happy, which is wrong.
Yes.
Only he can.
So he didn't know that, but so he decides to throw himself out of his little house or hut or apartment and just go wandering around. And by some strange chance, he comes upon this woman that you mentioned, who's kind of wandering along the canal, and he's just kind of thrust into this encounter with her. Like, he doesn't even really choose her. She just kind of like arrives in his life. So he has this opportunity to talk to a real woman, which is like what he needs.
Exactly. Hey, you mentioned some kind of adaptation. I guess it was Italian or French, or maybe French, of this story. Or am I mistaken?
Oh, he's a malcontent, which means he's maladjusted?
No. You wrote, or you spoke to me before a few months ago. You said there is adaptation, like movie. There is a movie on this.
Oh yes.
Was that Italian?
Mastrello-Mostriani, I guess, plays the character in White Nights, and it's a Visconti film, I guess. I don't have it like.
I'm asking because I'd like to have a look at this.
Yeah, but there's been adaptations. A lot of people have been interested in it. People have referred to it, from time to time. But I think it. If you just think about insomnia, we spoke in an earlier episode about the disruption of the natural rhythms, the circadian rhythms, and so I think this is something that we can explore more. I mean, insomnia is like a classic way of being. Like, I know so many insomniacs.
Exactly. Well, listen, before we change this subject, I'd like to know another reason why I love him. Maybe it's the only one.
Tell me.
Because he did not antagonize the girl when she rejected him. When she said, "Oh, here is my lover, but thank you very much for what you were about to be to me for all those nights." And he says, or he thinks, I don't remember that, "Thank you for, don't cry because it's over, but smile because it happened." And this guy did exactly the same thing, because what I would expect, because those kind of dreamers, frustrated and upset, they usually antagonize the girl who rejects them, and this guy didn't. That was surprise to me.
Yeah. Well, this guy's Russian. He's in a Russian novel. So He's a little different.
Or maybe because Dostoevsky wrote it from himself, like he was the main character. He just called himself a dreamer, because there is no name. There is no name of this guy in this White Knight's novel.
Yes,
So
because
maybe
he's the
it's him.
quintessential. Yeah, he's the quintessential guy. It's also just like, in Franz Kafka's work, The Metamorphosis, we do get the name of a character named Gregor, who wakes up to find that he's an insect. So he's like also not human. But there's so many stories about the the man who suddenly discovers himself in a very strange situation and just kind of trying to make the best of it. And like you said, he doesn't get really mad. He's a little bit baffled and just
Exactly,
kind of returns
exactly.
to his world of bafflement.
Exactly. Before, for a minute, I thought that when I was reading it through, I thought that maybe here comes the day where he strikes this Nastenka. Nastenka was her name, the girl's name,
Yes.
like twice in the head with the blunt side of an axe, like killing her. But then I remember that Dostoevsky reserved this scenario for another novel, like Crime and Punishment, and so on. So
Yes.
that's a good one. And he did not
Yeah.
antagonize her at all. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Yes.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for letting me to pour out my feelings.
Yes. Okay, we'll talk next episode. Adios.